Okay. All right, we have people popping on now. So as we look to get started, just a few little housekeeping items. First off, my name is Kelsey Larson. I am the marketing director here at RAZR, and super excited to be hosting here with you guys today. As far as this webinar goes, we are recording this session, and it will be shared out to you via email once we wrap up. So that will be available for any future watching and sharing as you wish. Additionally, if you do have any questions, in the lower right-hand side, there is a questions tab. So feel free to input any questions you have. This is private, so only our team will be able to see it, and we will be able to answer any of those questions at the end of the session today. There is also a chat functionality as well. Feel free to put anything in the chat. That is viewable by all attendees here today. So just something to keep in mind depending on which functionality you would like to use, if at all. So with that, we are going to get started here. I am going to introduce to you now Warren Weems, who is our strategy leader at RAZR with over 20 years of experience in loyalty and rewards. He spent his career helping brands build programs that actually drive engagement and real behavior change. At RAZR, he partners with clients to turn complex challenges into practical, data-driven strategies that deliver measurable results. I get the pleasure of working with Warren day in and day out, and super excited to have him here today to share with you all about campaigns. So without further ado, I will pass it to Warren to get started on our content.
All right. Thank you, Kelsey. And great to have you as my co-facilitator here, as always. So I appreciate you getting us set up and running. And with that, let's just dive right in. Okay, so let's just start with engagement, and we know the power that these programs have, but I just want to remind everyone of some of the things that we see, right? Some of the statistics that are coming across. So first one is choice. Members are choosing cards based on these programs. 73% of consumers will choose a card based on what they see in a rewards program and what they feel is going to benefit them, what it's going to bring to the table for them. So that's a pretty high number. Increased spend. We're going to touch on this one again later, but cardholders who redeem rewards spend more. And we'll explain all of this in a little bit. So I'll hold off on getting too deep into that one. And then satisfaction. You know, we're all looking to drive deeper satisfaction, higher net promoter scores among our members. And we see this. We see stronger satisfaction lift with members that are experiencing these programs. So very strong metrics to back up what these programs bring to the table. And it's not just should we have a program now, this has become table stakes. So as you can see from the chart here, 90% of general purpose card spend is now on rewards cards. These are huge numbers. But what it means is members expect this now. Everyone is expecting that their card brings something to them. So the differentiator now becomes, well, how do you bring this to the market? How do you set yourself apart by bringing something to your program that's a little bit different than everyone else? It's no longer, should we have one? It's, we have one. How are we going to actually execute on it? And what do we do to differentiate it? I want to talk about a few different campaign scenarios here. So these are actually kind of mini case studies that talk about real results that have been seen. And we can share these links with you later as well. But I just wanted to walk through a couple of these really quickly. So the first one was a study on an FI. Visa helped this particular institution with a short-term kind of surprise and delight reward. So kind of small, $20 reward. It was outside the normal mechanic, but they put a deadline on it. So what that does is it creates some urgency and motivation. And what they saw out of this was really strong results. They saw 22% overall spend and 4% higher utilization. So, and one of the important things to take away from this one, I believe, is it was overall spend lift. It wasn't just one category or one option. We saw a strong incremental spend across categories for the audience that was targeted. So the takeaway from this for me would be, even a small reward can be meaningful if you target the message and you're really driving towards shifting that behavior. I thought this was a really fun one. Let's look at another one, looking at specific MCPs. And this one, or MCCs, this one is about triple points on gas promotion. And what they did with this one is they targeted both dormant and lapsed members. And they got a really strong result, as you can see. So triple points was the offer. It's pretty rich, but very targeted. And what they saw was over a 4% re-engagement among the dormant members. And that's a pretty impressive result, right? These members have gone away and in theory weren't coming back. So to be able to use that member base and bring 4% back is pretty interesting. And then for the lapse category, so these are members who were active but weren't spending in that particular category, they managed to see a 17% lift. So overall, they saw $121 incremental lift. Again, very impressive numbers. And they looked across the portfolio. They didn't just look across the gas purchases for that particular MCC. So we see strong results, not just in individual categories, but we can see strong results across categories. Now, another campaign type that we often see is reactivation. And what I want to call out here is, reactivation isn't just a single email or a single message. It's a journey. And we start with a trigger, something that tries to get a member, our program back on their radar. Maybe it's a new card, maybe it's an activity, or maybe it's a targeted campaign. Something is going to kick this off. Then we want to educate them about this. We want to remind them why this program matters, what the benefits are, and what they're missing. And then from there, it's about small nudges like progress reminders or simple prompts to remind them to take some action. And then they see the incentive, it's timely, it's relevant, and this is where we're going to win them back. This is what's going to drive them. And there was a campaign that the case study in here that ran through this exact process. And they saw activation accelerated by 37%. And the card holders that were involved spent up to $4,000 more. So if the structure is performed well and designed and executed well, we should see really strong reactivation results. So just a few examples of what's real, some case studies that have been out there that are showing that well-designed campaigns can actually have a real and measurable impact. And we see this ourselves. And certainly numbers vary a lot, but we see up to a 50% spend increase when people are running campaigns against their programs. This is a really strong incremental number, as I'm sure you'll agree with. So results are there. They can be had. And with effective campaigns that are designed and measured, we can see really strong returns on our investment. And I should note, these findings are validated with control groups. So they're not just overall spend. We measure very specifically to see what kind of response we get and show that we're actually driving return on investment. Now, I want to talk a little bit about redemption, because redemption, in our view, is the loyalty moment. And redemption participation is growing among programs. We're seeing the numbers here rise across the board. So you can see from our chart, basically we have a flywheel that we can continue to drive. Our members earn rewards, they accumulate those benefits, they redeem them. That's that key trigger, that key emotional moment. And that drives advocacy for the program. So like we see in the bullet points, and we like to say, so earning drives spend, it drives behavior. Redemption drives loyalty. It's those redemption moments that really create that emotional bond between a member and the program that they are participating in. And this is in the data, and we see this ourselves. And the numbers again vary, but we see redeemers spend as much as 4 times more than non-redeemers. Now this is not causal, but there's a correlation, and that correlation is a really strong metric to show that the people that are redeeming are more engaged. They're more involved in some way. So this is a pretty strong metric to show to your leadership teams as you're trying to figure out campaigns and trying to secure budgets to move these things forward. There's an impact. Okay, we do have an approach to this, and we share this with you to see if this is something that you want to use and replicate in your environments. So we'll walk you through what these steps are and how we think about campaign planning. So the first is benchmarking performance. It's really important to get those metrics up front so we know what success means down the road. And I'm going to walk through these in more detail. We want to understand our members. So, it's great to think about, some sort of campaign, but what are our members looking for? What's really going to resonate with them? And then we go through and we define our strategy and reward. So we want an offer that we feel is going to drive clear value. And again, is going to resonate with the members based on what we've learned so far. Now, if possible, we should think about segmentation. This is where we want to start to break down either the offer or potentially the messaging or both. And there's different ways to think about that. And we'll get into a few more details on how we look at that one as well. Then we want to execute the plan, and it's not only the offer, it's all the messaging that's going to be that goes along with it. An invisible promotion is not a promotion. Typically, you're not going to see much uplift unless you have a way to tell your members about it and get them excited. Of course, we can't have a successful outcome unless we're tracking it. So we want to monitor our key performance indicators, and we want to make adjustments that are going to feed into the next time that we run one of these. And then, of course, we do deep dive post-campaign to see what happened. And that's all driven by those benchmarks up front. So we start to create this full circle. And we like to view this as iterative, right? So we go through a campaign process. These are limited time. We learn what happened. We learn what worked. We learn what maybe we could have done better. And then we change it for next time and we repeat the cycle. So there's a very specific process that we run through that we believe helps us plan more effective campaigns. Now, let's go into the details just a little bit. So baseline, this to me is critical. I'm a data guy. I'm a numbers guy. If you don't have a baseline, you really have no credibility to show that you made a change, that something was impacted. So get your baseline in place, get your metrics from your historical data, define what your KPIs are, what you want to see for lift, and that's going to drive your ROI. This is going to show you what was successful, and we actually made a difference. We achieved the goals that we set out to do. We also want to think about our members, right? So this isn't just an offer. This isn't just numbers. We want to think about who we're targeting offers at and why they're going to respond, what makes sense to them. And there's a couple of different ways to do this. And we take a human-centered design approach to these. So one is looking at personas. And you probably have personas in your organization, but you can enhance these by thinking about different ways members are engaging with these programs, right? So do we have travel enthusiasts? Do we have people that are seeking cash back, or any other mix where we can isolate people based on the behaviors or their desires? And that can help us target a little bit better. And then we want to find their pain points. Are there things that they could be helped with through the program that we might be able to do that can make their lives easier, that can make things a little bit better for them? So it's a matter of, look at your members, understand where they're at, so that when you're creating an offer, you're really thinking about them. And at the end of the day, this really is grounding yourselves in what they're experiencing and putting yourself in their shoes. Like, what do they want to get out of this? And then, of course, we need to define an offer. And we have a program principles, set of core principles that we apply when we do program design. We also apply these when we do campaign design. And really, it's a lens that we use to make sure that we're aligned with kind of our core values, our core beliefs on how these should come together. So we look at this in 4 ways. First, is it feasible? Can we actually pull this thing off? Do we have all the capabilities and all the technical infrastructure to be able to do it? Important, is it profitable? Are we actually going to drive a return on our investment here? So dig in, understand the economics, and make sure that we're getting something out of this economically that makes sense. Is it desirable? Going back to the human-centered portion, do members want to be part of this campaign? Are they going to feel that it's delivering something to them that makes sense to them, that's relevant? And then finally, flexible. Sometimes this one feels it's a little outside the other 3. And where it fits in the campaign world is test and learn. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later, so I won't steal too much of future slide thunder. But we want the ability to test and learn and really reinvent campaigns along the way, based on what we find out, based on our comparison to the key metrics, so that we're really driving the best possible campaign at the end of the day, based on what we've learned. Now, when we think about segmentation, we want to look at different ways that we can segment our audiences. And there's so many different ways to do this. But some of the ways to think about this are looking at behavior and preferences, right? What are spending habits? What are demographics? How are people using products? Demographics, I know, is a key one for most of us now, as especially seeking out acquisition of younger audiences. How do we get them more engaged? So we want to think about some of these things that will help us better target those members as we design these campaigns. So a couple of ways to look at this are engagement level, right? Are we seeing active members versus inactive? You saw from one of our case studies that targeting dormant accounts might be a good way to try and bring some of those members back, maybe with a rich offer. We can do this by reward preference. So if you're thinking about trying to drive behavior and highlighting the value of a redemption, you could go after travel enthusiasts or people looking for cashback or students building credit. There's a lot of different ways to think about what a preference is on that earning side and driving the excitement to try and get members to engage based on that type of audience. And we don't have to just have different offers when we're thinking about personalization. Maybe we just want a single offer, but we tailor the communications based on those segments. So it's no longer just, hey, let's create 3 different offers for 3 different segments. If we want to keep things easy, we want to keep things simple, maybe we just put out the exact same offer, but we can show people something different in messaging that's going to resonate with them. Or, of course, we can create different offers if we feel that's what's going to be the driver, right? So maybe for some, we know we're going to potentially drive them for a high frequency category like gas or groceries, or we might go after travel categories for an audience that's interested in that. So there's a lot of different ways to think about how we can drive personalization into these segments. At the end of the day, it's going to be based on our data. I'll keep coming back to that, whether it's for metrics or whether it's for personalization. Our data should help inform what these campaign strategies end up looking like. Now, a good campaign is nothing without good communication, right? I think one of my colleagues says it all the time: invisible promotions don't work. So we want to make sure that we've got strong communication out there. And some of the ways to think about this are launch announcements, right? Make sure that you're telling your members what's coming. Focus on the reward rather than just the technical mechanics, right? Drive some excitement and make people understand what they could get by participating. And create some urgency. We saw that with a case study as well, which is, last chance notices or just something to remind people that there's a limited amount of time for them to engage. And that can really drive behavior. We can drive high awareness alerts to make sure that people are getting these at the right time. And then we talked about nudges earlier, right? If there's a way to show a goal progress tracker or something that relates to where they are in the life cycle of a campaign, we can give them a nudge. We can tell them, hey, keep going, you're almost there. And then, of course, time-sensitive offers. And these can be seasonal. They could be just based on the campaign timing itself. Just making sure, again, we're driving a little bit of sense of urgency, and that can really turn a member to act and behave the way that we're looking them to do so. Now, just a couple of things to add on that. Simple and clear earning rules is important, right? We don't want really complex campaign rules that are going to make it hard for people to understand and then figure out whether they're going to jump in or not, right? Keep it easy, keep it clear, and that's going to likely drive more behavior. Like I said, continue to nudge our members with messages throughout the campaign. And if there is a threshold that they need to accommodate of some sort, say they needed to have a certain number of spend transactions or hit a spend threshold, make sure when they're close, we're telling them about it, right? Remind them of that along the way, and make sure we're not losing the opportunity to drive them to that next level, to drive them to that next criteria, so that they can earn whatever it is the campaign is going to offer them. All right, and this is just some examples of how you could think about messaging, right? So really, these two messages that you see from the left and right are for the same type of offer. We're just communicating them in a slightly different way. And this can be a really effective way to drive segmentation without having to change that underlying offer. So if you want the same offer and you want to just make sure that you're trying to appeal to our different segmented audiences, this is a great way to think about doing that. It's a little easier to accomplish than multiple offers, and it's a good way to test and learn and see if we can actually resonate with audiences in a different way. All right, and then I want to kind of end on what I feel is really important, which is the notion of test and learn. I really feel strongly about this. I think campaigns aren't a one and done deal. Campaigns are a strong way for us to think about testing what works and then using that to drive campaigns in the future, right? This should be an iterative cycle. Go through a campaign, measure it, see what worked, see what didn't work, and then move into the next level. And sometimes what's going to happen is your campaigns are going to drive potentially a new normal change for your program, right? Maybe you find that a benefit always gets really strong results, and that should be an always on aspect of your program. That's a possibility that might come out of your test and learn process. But we feel it's important to go through that. And ultimately, that should be part of your standard operating practice when you think about campaigns, right? So again, it's not a one-shot deal. It is a limited time campaign, but we should be looking at it as an opportunity to learn about what works, adjust along the way, and then continue to tweak these campaigns as we move forward. And one of the reasons this is so important, at least in my experience, is consumer tastes change over time. So you may find there's a specific type of campaign that works every time you run it, and that's great. But you don't want to stop measuring it, because tastes can change, consumer behavior can change, and you want to watch for those things happen so that you can react and you can put out the best and most effective campaign that's going to work for your audience. All right. I would like to open it up for questions from anyone. Is there anything that's on your mind that we can help answer for you today?
Awesome. Thanks, Warren. Really good stuff. Really good insights into kind of how to think about it from a data perspective, as well as, some steps that everyone here can take to kind of see what they can figure out on their own. So really appreciate the time. We do have a few questions that have rolled in. We'll take some time here, just a couple minutes to answer a couple. But then for any of those questions that we do not get to, we will be sure to follow up with you one-on-one to be sure that all of your questions are answered. So feel free to keep them rolling in as I do kind of pass some off to Warren here. But in the meantime, one of the questions that came in was, what's the best way to prove ROI and incremental impact to our stakeholders?
Yeah, that's a great one. Thanks, Kelsey. And it comes back to the framework we showed you. One, define your KPIs before you launch, right? Make sure that you have a clear baseline in place. If you don't know where you were, you're not going to know what your lift was and therefore your ROI once you get through the other side. So make sure you're looking at your historical metrics. Another key factor is using control groups. You need these to really isolate true impact. If you don't have that control group, you may not know of other things that have driven spend. And then focus on incremental lift, not just overall performance. At the end of the day, we should be challenging ourselves to show that we made a difference. We made a measurable incremental impact on the revenue that's coming in.
Yeah, good stuff. Control groups always a great reminder
Yeah.
that we can sometimes forget about. But awesome. And then one other question we'll answer here today is what are the most common pitfalls you see when launching a rewards campaign? And what is your recommendation on how they can be avoided?
Yeah, great question. I think I can think of a few. One is just not defining everything clearly up front. And that's why we have the framework that we have, so that we force ourselves to step through each of those questions and really define everything really well. Not setting your baseline. So back to the ROI question. If you're not setting your baselines, you're not setting your control groups, we don't see successful measurement of these campaigns. One thing I touched on briefly earlier, but overly complex rules can really make a campaign not work as well as it should. So if it's confusing to members or they don't just really know how to participate, these are things that can be a common pitfall as well. Keep it simple, keep it easy to understand, and then to me, build that measurement in right from the start, and that is a key to success.
Awesome. Super good stuff. Thank you so much, Warren. And thank you all for joining us today. Really great to have you here. Like I said, we will follow up with any questions that were unanswered. And then additionally, if you guys have any further questions for us that you think of internally, you guys are discussing what this looks like, how this comes to life, please reach out. We're happy to help start the conversation. We are always available as a resource. So we hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you so much. We will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kelsey.